to move into really talking about how does positive discipline align with Islam, which is usually a very important question for all of you attending here. When I was looking for a way to teach parenting, I explored several parenting philosophies out there. And then just randomly, I was invited to attend a workshop in San Diego by Jane Nelson herself. And it was training, doing the training to actually do parenting classes, just like I'm doing with you right here. And I went not knowing exactly what to expect. But I went there, I fell in love with it, and then I started thinking about how does it align with Islam. And over the last few years, I've become even more and more convinced that it aligns actually very, very well with Islam. I don't want to embarrass Ahud, but Ahud was one of the first people who actually started me on this journey of really answering the question, how does it align with Islam? So let's talk about this alignment right now. I'm going to share with you some of the principal goals of the Adlerian philosophy or the Adlerian school of psychology and see how it matches very well with the Islamic view of the world. Okay, so let's see that together. The first one is Adlerian psychology believe that in order for people to lead healthy lives, okay, and functioning lives, there needs to be social interest. Like social interest need to be part of the individual, need to be part of the community. And that reminds us of the hadith in Bukhari that the relation of the believer with another is like the bricks of a building, each strengthen another. That is social interest in Islam. And you can share many examples of other ahadith that also talks about how important we need to connect as a community. This is not the only one, right? This is a big piece of Islam. And nowadays, psychology research, this is the funny part, Islam has come up with all these rules, if you will, and regulations 1,500 years ago. And nowadays, psychology is telling us that one of the important pieces of happiness, in order for you to be happy and content in your life, you need to be engaged with other people. Also, you need to be spiritual. Like they're proving that all of the stuff that Islam has told us and is asking us to actually invoke in our lives, okay? They're telling us that all of these rules are actually very important for a happy life. Okay? Now, the next goal in Adlerian psychology is they believe, again, for a healthy and functioning life, a person, any individual, needs to feel belonging and significance. That person needs to belong to a community. Okay? Does that sound familiar to you? Okay? So again, in Quran, we have the ayah in Surah 49. We have created you in tribes and nations so you may know one another. And the noblest amongst you in the sight of Allah is the most pious. If that is not belonging and significance, what is? Okay? Another goal of the Adlerian psychology is that they really strongly believe that behind every behavior, there is a specific belief or a specific intention. Again, what do we have in our faith? That deeds are determined by their intentions, right? Another piece of the Adlerian psychology is the piece of encouragement, which I, have as part of the PD land here, okay? And that reminds us also of the ayah, it was by mercy of Allah that you, the Prophet, peace be upon you, were lenient with them. For if you had been stern and fierce of heart, they would have dispersed from around you. That's how the Quran describes the Prophet ﷺ. He was a person who encouraged the people around him. He wasn't someone who just pushed people or alienated people. Okay? So encouragement was a big piece of, how he dealt with companions and even his enemies. Another piece of the Adlerian psychology is the piece of mutual respect. which means you need to respect yourself and you need to respect other people. The beautiful example of this is the story of Abu Salman and Abu Darda. Salman al-Farisi and Abu Darda. So I'll very quickly remind you of the story. Salman and Abu Darda were brothers. The Prophet ﷺ made them brothers in Islam. Okay, when the Meccans came to Medina and we had the mixing of Muhajirin and Ansar. Okay, so one time Salman al-Farisi comes to visit Abu Darda because he is his brother, right? So he finds his wife, the wife of Abu Darda, Darda. He finds her looking really, unkempt. And she's really looking depressed and she's sad. And he looks at her and he's like, what happened to you? Why are you, so you're not taking care of yourself, and why are you sad and depressed like this? And she replies by saying, well, look at your brother, okay? He doesn't want anything to do with this life. So he is just fasting every day and he's staying up all night praying. And so he is not paying attention to anyone in the household. All he's doing is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what does Salman do? He goes in to visit his brother. So he is sitting with him. And then Abu Darda, of course, because he's generous, and this is the custom of the Muslims, he's bringing food for Salman to eat. And Salman says, I'm not going to eat unless you eat with me. So he breaks his fast, right? Because he's going to eat with his guest. Then it's almost bedtime, or they need to go to sleep. And then Abu Darda doesn't want to go to sleep. He wants to stay up, and pray. And Salman tells him, no, you're going to go to sleep right now. And we're going to wake up later on, and then we're going to pray. And they do that. And then Abu Darda becomes frustrated with Salman. Why? Because Salman is just intruding into his daily routine, So he goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, complaining about Salman and telling him, look what he did to me. He's really ruining my routine. I have a system here in place, and he's coming and he's just disrupting my system. Actually, before that, Salman told Abu Darda, he told him, everything has a right on you. You have a right on yourself, meaning you need to take care of yourself, meaning you need to sleep and you need to eat. Okay? Your wife has a right on you. Okay? Allah, of course, has a right on you. But everything has a right on you. So that's what Abu Darda went to the Prophet ﷺ to tell him. He said, look, Salman is saying all of that. And then what does the Prophet ﷺ tells Abu Darda? He says, by Allah, Salman is correct. So you see the mutual respect piece here in terms of what? In terms of Salman is teaching Abu Darda, just because you are so focused on your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mean you are going to forego your responsibilities to yourself even. We don't recognize this. We really do not recognize, especially parents. We do not recognize that we have a right on ourselves. We need to take care of ourselves. Whether emotionally, physically, you need to do it. No one else is going to do it for you. So remember that. Mutual respect, important. Another theme in the Adlerian psychology is the piece about kindness and firmness at the same time. So together. And this is the basis for this whole parenting philosophy. We're going to be firm, but we're going to be kind at the same time. Which looks something like, if you're going to say no to your child, you're going to say no, and this is my final answer, rather than, no! How many times did I tell you never to do this? You see, both of them are no. They're the same. One is said with kindness, which is the first one, because you're calm about it, and you're not humiliating your child. And the other one is firmness with meanness, okay? So this whole philosophy, and I don't want you to misunderstand this philosophy. This is not about being permissive with your children at all. This is about establishing limits, but you're going to establish limits with a kindness, with an understanding, with a collaboration. And that's what we're going to be spending all 7 weeks doing, learning how to be kind and how to be firm at the same time. The example that I'm going to give you about firmness and kindness at the same time is a beautiful story from the Seerah. Ibn Abbas, okay, was a young boy in this story. So he's sitting with the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. Okay, they're all sitting together, chatting, and Ibn Abbas is to the right of the Prophet ﷺ, sitting on his right. And then the Prophet is drinking from a cup, and this cup now is going to go around the circle. So everybody else is going to drink from this cup. Okay? Now let me ask you, according to the Sunnah, who's the first person that needs to drink? The one on the right, who's Ibn Abbas, right? According to the norms of respecting the elders, who's supposed to drink first? The elders who are sitting in this circle, because Ibn Abbas is the youngest, he's a boy. There is Abu Bakr there is Umar there, all of them way older than him. So what does the Prophet ﷺ do, which I find really amazing and most beautiful? He looks at Ibn Abbas and he says, would you give me permission to pass this cup to, the elders in the group? Because he's sitting, I just want you to see, he does not dismiss him just because he's a boy, because that's what we do. Okay, if we're sitting in the same situation like the Prophet ﷺ, that's what we're gonna do. And we're gonna, it's just like, hey, and just give the cup to somebody who's older in the circle, right? The Prophet doesn't do that. He acknowledges that Ibn Abbas, who's the youngest, has a right. And he says, give me permission to pass this to the older people in the group. Ibn Abbas refuses. And because he says to the Prophet ﷺ, I would not allow anyone to drink from this cup after you except me. Okay. And does the Prophet allow him to do that? Yes, he does. See, this is, you see, the firmness and the kindness at the same time, with also mutual respect, because we're respecting the child and we're respecting the older people in the group. I mean, I see this commonly sometimes if I'm standing, somewhere and I'm talking to a young person and an older person comes in, they assume that I need to give them attention immediately just because they're older. This is something we as a community unconsciously do all the time. So just remember the example of how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with Ibn Abbas. Okay, another theme of the Adlerian psychology is solution focused. We focus on solutions, kind of like what Samar did earlier when I was saying, oh, there are no page numbers in this handout, and she's like, but there are titles. Okay, solutions, right? The example of the solution from the Seerah is the story of the Bedouin who actually urinated in the masjid. I'm sure most of you have heard of this story, right? So the Sahaba, companions, are sitting in the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ is sitting there, and then this Bedouin comes in, he urinates, and then the companions are out and, upset. How could he do this in the masjid? This is urine, which is najasa, the masjid, we pray. And they are about to scream, and what does the Prophet ﷺ do? He says, wait, calm down. You're going to scare him. Let him finish. Let him finish. And then pour water over the urine. Solutions. You see? Solutions. Yeah. Another theme, and this is the last theme we're going to talk about today, is the collaboration from all. This is a big piece in Adlerian psychology, that you need to collaborate. Everybody has to collaborate. And that reminds us of the principle of Shura in Islam. Right? You all know this principle. The Prophet ﷺ did it. He made Shura with his companions in almost everything, except in situations where he knew that he couldn't do Shura, that he needs to do it through the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But most other times it was Shura all the time, right? In this philosophy, there is something that is called family meeting, which is basically a Shura, which is basically the family coming together, the parents and the children together to have Shura over issues that concern the family. And they all come up together with the solutions. It's not about the parents saying this is how it needs to be done. It's not about that. So, Any questions about how positive discipline aligns with Islam? I know I talked for a long time, and usually we don't do this, but I feel that if you don't mind, thank you. I feel that I need to really make this piece clear, because there usually are questions in people's minds as in terms of like, why did I choose this philosophy to actually propagate and teach and educate and be passionate about, okay? So any questions?
I have a question about the Israeli psychology. For the social interest concept, is it different from the social responsibility, or?
No, it's part of it. The social responsibility is part of the social interest, yeah. So you feel like you are responsible to be a contributing member of society, that you have a responsibility to contribute. And through contribution and through being of service, that's how you gain your sense of self. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Yes. Okay. Any other questions?
On kindness and firmness at the same time. You just gave an example, and you're dealing with a child who comes to you, Mama, can I do that? And I said, no, you can't. And then the child is persistent, and then you again tell them, you know what I mean. I said, when I say no, it means no. And then the child comes back again, and then you yell at the child, you know, because you want him to be distanced now because you're tired. So how should we be dealing with things like that, you know, on firmness plus the being kind as well at the same time?
So we're actually going to have a whole 7 weeks to talk about this, because I mean there are many ways, there are many positive discipline tools, and depending on the situation, one tool will work, another tool will not work. But one thing I am going to tell you though, if this is the pattern of the child, okay, I can tell you and I could be wrong, but this has been my observation, that when this is happening, it means that sometimes the parents actually give in after the nagging. And because the child knows that, they're actually going to nag. So in the beginning, you need to make this commitment to yourself to actually not give in to the nagging at all, and then that behavior will distinguish itself after a while, after actually it becomes even worse. Because what, I mean, it's normal human behavior, right? You do something and it works, right? You come one day, you do it, it doesn't work. What are you going to do? You're going to escalate behavior because you want to get to the same result that you used to have before, okay? But we're going to do many positive discipline tools that I hope will answer that question for you, okay? But the first one, though, the first tool is not to give in to the nagging period, which means you actually have to, for example, maybe go away so you don't hear the nagging, you don't hear the whining, you know, lock yourself in your room, something like that, okay, until that period passes. Okay, other questions? Yes?
In fact, it's an observation. What I see is that, like the situation that was mentioned before, I have a daughter too who is very persistent in what they want to achieve. I think also it's a strength in many ways, because we have also achieved things through being persistent, and they might be doing the same thing, and we need to be positively enforcing them without not destructively disengaging them.
Okay, so you're talking about the balance between when you actually need to say no and be firm about it, and say it one time and they listen to you, okay? And that's not going to be a suppression of their personality or a suppression of their voice or a suppression of their strength. The other area is that when they have a space to actually voice their opinion, and you're going to say, yeah, we're going to do it your way. And you're going to say, wow, that's a great idea. Okay, because that when you do that, you are strengthening their sense of self and their sense of, you know, contribution. But we have to be careful, because I have parents who come into my office, okay? Because they are so scared of the point that you are mentioning, which is, I don't want make my child suppressed or oppressed, you know? And then they lose it in terms of like they allow the child just to rule the whole house. So we don't want that to happen too. There is a fine balance between allowing the child space to assert themselves and have a voice, and from you as a parent also having the ability to say no and mean it and be firm from the beginning. And we have 7 weeks to cover all of that, okay?